So, in today's episode, I'm going to talk about a simple technique that is a brain hack that will help you hack your brain to reliably lower some of your stress. And you may already be doing this technique, so maybe this episode is actually going to help verify that you're doing something good for yourself. But if you aren't trying this technique, definitely put it into play because I've worked with many parents who have implemented this to very good effect, right? So, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about a brain hack that overcomes one of the ways that we experience stress. And let me give you a simple story to let you know what I'm talking about. Welcome to the Being Dad After Divorce podcast. I'm John Peters, your host, and these are resources to help you cope better, parent better, and co-parent better through and after divorce. So if you haven't watched the previous episodes, I'll put a link up here at the top right here if you want to jump there and start at episode 1 and then come forward. Or you can just watch this episode and go back and start with episode 1 after you watch this one. Up to you. All right. So in today's episode, I'm going to talk about a simple technique that is a brain hack that will help you hack your brain to reliably lower some of your stress. And you may already be doing this technique, so maybe this episode is actually going to help verify that you're doing something good for yourself. But if you aren't trying this technique, definitely put it into play because I've worked with many parents who have implemented this to very good effect, right? So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about a brain hack that overcomes one of the ways that we experience stress. And let me give you a simple story to let you know what I'm talking about. So imagine if I go to the grocery store and I have to get like a dozen things for some complex meal that I'm going to prepare, all right? If I don't write those things down on a shopping list, then while I'm at the store, I have to be mentally juggling all of those things in my head to make sure that when I get home, I have purchased all the stuff that I need for the meal. If I write the things on the shopping list, suddenly my stress is relieved because I don't have to be mentally juggling all those things. My mental activity was just identifying the things and writing them down on the list. And then at the store, I just have to refer to the list to make sure I accurately get all the things that I intended to buy for the meal, right? Now, here's something that goes on with our brains under stress, okay? This is a related separate issue of our brain that makes this reliable technique make even more sense, okay? When we are under high stress, part of what happens in your brain is the right front part of your brain gets much more active, and that's where we tend to think anxious, negative thoughts. The left front tends to get less active, okay? And that's because the two front halves of your brain are kind of in a reflexive relationship where when one is more active, the other one becomes less active. And we'll come back to that with another brain hack in a later episode. But this is why when you're going through a period of prolonged stress, you start to notice things like I'm having trouble focusing. I'm having trouble with complex tasks at work that used to not bother me too much. I'm having trouble with my short-term memory, okay? That's because the sustained stress state of your brain is making certain parts become more active and certain parts become less active. And the parts about paying attention, tracking complex things, having focus, those tend to get diminished with sustained stress, okay? So even if normally you could go to the grocery store and get your 12 items without any strain, when you're under sustained stress, that's going to be an even more difficult task than it normally would be, right? But this is compounded by the fact that as a parent going through divorce, you probably have noticed that every day you think of a whole bunch of random things related to your divorce that some of which, at least, you need to retain, okay? Now I'll give you an example. Like the other day, I've had this happen many times, but the other day I was talking with a dude who's going through a divorce, and he said, well, my wife and I are going to sell the house, and so there's a whole bunch of things related to selling the house. We need to do this repair and that repair before we put it up for sale. And we need to get it appraised so we know what the value is. And we need to figure out which real estate agent we're going to conscript to help us with the sale and blah, blah, blah. So there are a whole bunch of things related to the house sale, okay? like a normal person, some of these things he was thinking of randomly at like 3 a.m. when he would wake up and before he went back to sleep, right? And so, like a lot of people, not just with the house sale, but you're going through a divorce, you got a whole bunch of different adjustments, and you have things you have to research, things you have to pay attention to, choices you have to make, plans you have to make, certain steps you have to take in certain sequences. And you randomly think of these, maybe in the middle of the night, but maybe during the day. And it's like constructing the biggest possible shopping list in the world, right? So much more important and consequential than me going to the store to buy things for a complex meal. You're probably thinking of this, that, and the other thing. And it's all adding up to this big jumble of things that then your brain is trying to sort through, which it's harder to do because you're under stress. And the part of your brain that does the sorting is partially shut down. But there arguably are a bunch of important things that you're identifying that you are then keeping as balls in the air mentally, right? And that's part of why you're stressed out. So what is this technique? Get a notebook or start a document on one of your devices. And as you think of important things that have enough importance that they're the type of thing that you need to come back to later potentially and do something about, put it on the list. Because, if you wake up at 3 a.m. and you start worrying about all the things related to the house sale and you don't just write them down on a notebook and go back to sleep, your brain will say, that is so important that I don't want to lose it. Therefore, I'm going to start mentally juggling that as one of the balls in the air. And you're probably not going to easily relax and go back to sleep because your brain doesn't want to forget those important things that you just popped into your head. Okay. So keep a notebook handy. When you think of random things, write it down. This is your working draft of your grand list that maybe later you prioritize by sorting by urgency and importance, which things are more or less important and which things are more or less urgent and need to be done in either a certain order or by a certain time. You can do that organization later, but just getting things onto the list will relieve you of having to mentally juggle them in your head, right? So this is not like keeping a diary of like sorting out all of the psychological issues that you're thinking of related to the divorce. That's a separate process that you might do through journaling or with your therapist or your pastoral counselor or something like that. This is just, if I think of some random thing that I don't want to forget, I'm going to write it on my list so that I don't have to be mentally juggling it. All right. So I've shared this technique with countless parents in the past, and many, many of them have come back and told me this one simple thing goes a long way for lowering them down a notch on their stress scale. So try that out, see if it works for you. And if it does, report back here in the comments below. And by the way, two things. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe. Please like this video if you like this kind of content. Helps to teach YouTube something about who wants to watch my videos. If you have comments, please leave comments below. And if you find any of my videos on this podcast particularly helpful, feel free to share them on your social media to help us get them out to a wider audience, okay? The other thing is, be aware that if you're a dad going through divorce, or if you're a dad who's already separated and dealing with the aftermath of a divorce, I have an online coaching group, and I'll put the link down in the description. So if you'd like to jump into that group, I have multiple weekly group coaching calls. And also, if you join now, as a bonus, you get a free one-on-one coaching session with me, an individual session, and that's a $130 value. So if you join soon, you'll get that bonus gift. So you can check out more information about that with the link below. And I will see you in episode 5.